Hello and welcome to Frankly Speaking, where we dive deep into regional headlines and speak with leading policymakers and business leaders. I am Katie Jensen. On this episode of Frankly Speaking, we hear from Lebanese presidential candidate Ziad Hayek, who is on a mission to shatter Lebanon's political deadlock and forge a path to a stable government. Can he triumph without Hezbollah's backing, or will he be forced to join forces with them? What strategies does he have to end Lebanon's economic turmoil and wipe out corruption for good? Plus, can he avert a full-scale war with Israel? Or is Lebanon teetering on the brink of a devastating conflict with multiple regional powers? Mr. Hayek, thank you for joining us today on Frankly Speaking. Now, you have recently announced your bid to run for president in Lebanon. In addition to a potential war that could erupt any day, as indicated by the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, Lebanon is also suffering from an economic crisis, the aftermath of the pandemic, as well as the horrific 2020 port explosion, not to mention a number of internal and regional tensions too. Frankly speaking, why on earth would you want this job?
I want this job because I really feel that this place is one of the best countries in the world with so much potential. And yet the political discourse in it has been going in the wrong direction. And I would like to change that. I'm hoping to be able to change the political dialogue, focus more on socio-economic matters, how to develop the country, how to develop its economy, rather than continuing the conversation that usually takes place about this faction wants this guy and this faction wants that guy. And none of these candidates have presented any program, any vision for the future. So I would like to change the way that the Lebanese public looks at politics in general, focus on policies rather than the usual politics of I would like to replace you just because I would like to sit in your place.
But let's be realistic for a moment. 1.5 years after the end of former President Aoun's term, Lebanon remains without a president or an empowered government. So do you think that a candidate like you, with no historical political affiliation, really has a better chance than a political loyalist in order to break the deadlock?
I think so. I think the makeup of parliament for the first time in Lebanon is such that it allows to do that. The two general factions that are defined by either pro-Hezbollah or against Hezbollah, and pro-Western camp or pro-East, these two larger factions are almost equally divided in parliament, and neither side is able or has been able for the past year and a half to be able to get their candidate elected. And so I think that they need to come to terms with that situation. They need to focus on finding a president, a candidate that they can both feel comfortable with, and yet it does not belong to either side.
Well, Mr. Hayek, that all sounds good. But again, we all know how the political system in Lebanon works, or rather doesn't work. Hezbollah has such a tight grip on almost every aspect of daily life. Do you really think that you stand a chance without aligning yourself with Hezbollah, or is that a compromise that you're happy to make?
I think that the focus that I have today is on making sure that I'm an acceptable candidate to all sides, because all factions have to be comfortable, and I wouldn't want to be the candidate of either side. That's why I'm running as an independent candidate. At the end of the day, we are not going to move Lebanon from the mud that it has been in, whether, on all the problems that you mentioned in the introduction, or the financial crisis caused by the government default and the banking crisis and the banking system's bankruptcy and all of that, unless we really get to understand the issues that all the parties face and, like their concerns and allay their concerns. So that applies to Hezbollah, applies to all the other parties.
But again, Mr. Hayek, Hezbollah not only controls a big chunk of the Shiite population, but also enjoys wide support from Christian Maronites too, including your powerful contender Gibran Bassil, who, as we know, is the son-in-law of former President Michel Aoun, who became president essentially because of his backing of Hezbollah.
Yes, I mean, of course, I do understand that Hezbollah has a influential role in this election. I don't discount that, but so do other parties. So Hezbollah has not been able to get its candidate elected so far, and neither have the other parties. So eventually, yes, I do understand that people may think that my position is a bit unrealistic simply because Lebanon has not had this type of situation before. But I think really it is in this situation that we have the opportunity to break away from the past and look to Lebanon's future in a different way.
Sure, but then how does that work in? But then how does that work in reality? Because I think there is no denying that the people of Lebanon deserve a president who can unite the nation, who can steer them through this perfect storm of various crises. But I have to wonder whether the president can really bring an end to Lebanon's persistent political paralysis.
Look, I have made a career of being able to work with people that everybody else said, oh, you cannot work with this guy. You cannot work with this group. And that I have, my career has been built on that, has been built on being able to reach out and work with people whom everybody considers as unworkable with. And I believe I can do that. It is the job of a president under the Lebanese constitution to be a convener. The president in Lebanon, under Lebanon's constitution, is not the CEO. So it's not a chief executive officer. It's more the role of a chairman. And a chairman exactly has to do that. So the governance of the country is constitutionally under the Council of Ministers, the entire Council of Ministers, not just one person. So it's not the president, it's not the prime minister. Now, when the Council of Ministers meets, the president chairs those meetings if he wishes to. And it is precisely that where I see the role of the president of being a chairman that can guide the conversation, that can guide the agenda of the Council of Ministers meetings in the direction of making sure that the country comes out of the gridlock that it is in politically and also, advances on the economic and social level. The Lebanese public in general is really yearning for somebody that can address the needs that it has, the daily needs of the Lebanese citizen, not just the geopolitics of America and Iran and all this conversation that really leads nowhere at the end of the day for the common person on the street.
Okay, but one would argue whether a chairman is really engaged with the daily people on the street, whether they are too far removed from the day-to-day realities, because I think many really see you as the embodiment of a technocrat. There's no denying you've had significant success in business, in economics, and in politics as well. You've led several major reforms for the power sector, the telecom sector within Lebanon too. You've also introduced a number of PPP laws. You've worked with the United Nations as well. But I have to wonder, as the president, do you have the ability to be able to carry out those delicate maneuvers that is required within Lebanon's existing confessional system?
The people that see my image, my public persona, have the same impression as you do. The people that know me personally know that I'm a village boy. I was born and raised in Beit Shabeb. It's a town, a very picturesque town. I continue to be a village boy. And my connection to people on the ground is very, very strong, even though that has not traditionally come out in the media.
Well, let's talk about your experience in a little bit more detail, because you built a very successful career as an investment banker before returning to Lebanon in 2006 to join the government under the former Prime Minister Fouad Siniora. But of course, within 1 month, war broke out between Hezbollah and Israel, and you suddenly found yourself a member of quite a small team, suddenly leading the country, as well as being engaged in international negotiations to achieve a ceasefire. Tell me, what was that experience like?
It was an amazing experience. I was very new to government, as you mentioned, um, and it was a situation where most people that could leave the country, that included people working in government, did leave. So it was a very small group of us that was left in the Grand Sarai, the seat of government. Of course, I was not leading any negotiations or anything. I was just a team member that was there, that was helping with whatever was needed, anything from arranging the distribution of fuel to hospitals to helping with writing speeches to helping with some of the ideas for negotiation. But I certainly was not in a leading position. It's just that it was a situation that really showed me the insides of international politics, and under a very stressful war situation. So it was a fantastic experience that I hope that we don't have to really have Lebanon live again. I know that we are living it in the south at this point in time, and there are many of our citizens engaged in that kind of situation. But what I would like to do is find a way towards peace and tranquility and building a prosperous future.
Well, peace and tranquility feels like it's the opposite of what Lebanon is going through today, because not only is Lebanon in the midst of the severe economic crisis we've talked about, it's also engulfed in another Israeli-Hezbollah low-intensity war in the south we've mentioned too. It's displaced tens of thousands of civilians. It's caused untold damage to infrastructure and farming. So, Mr. Hayek, tell me, do you have any ideas on how to avert what looks like it could inevitably be a full-scale war?
Look, I think both the Israelis and the Lebanese, including Hezbollah, we have to realize, all of us, that these wars lead nowhere. It's just destruction on both sides. And at the end of the day, this conflict has gone on for decades. And all these wars end with some compromise and some agreement on a ceasefire that lasts, for a certain period of time. We need to move to finding lasting peace. And the makings of that were already starting to happen when Lebanon reached an agreement on the delineation of the maritime borders with Israel. There was work that was continuing, helped along by the Americans to delineate the land borders. Unfortunately, this Gaza situation came up and changed things. Well, but I think when the dust settles, we do need to go back to working on the task of making sure that we build the lasting peace. For now, it is a situation that is terrible. There is no doubt about it. I think that cooler heads will eventually prevail, as they always do in every conflict, and we will see some agreement between the parties.
It does feel like the conflict is escalating, though. The type of weapons that are being used is changing. The intensity is also upping the ante as well. We've seen comments previously from the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. He's threatened to turn Beirut into the next Gaza. Of course, on the international scene, we've seen bodies from the US, the UK, Germany, France as well. They've issued a joint statement from Normandy. They've called for de-escalation along the Israeli-Lebanese border in line with the UN peacekeeping missions. Tell me, do you think that Israel is really interested in de-escalation, or is it looking for that opportune moment to really exert some pressure and see this conflict move into a full-blown war with Lebanon as well?
Regardless of what the current state of things is in Israel, I do think that, as I said, I I trust that cooler heads will prevail, and Israel knows that it is in its best interest not to engage in a war in Lebanon that it cannot win. Lebanon is not Gaza. It's going to be a lot more difficult. It's something that Israel has experienced in the past, and I don't think the Israelis wish to escalate the war in Lebanon. But this continuation, continuing to play with fire for tit for tat and all of that, is not helpful, because we are a hair trigger away from an escalation. I mean, any day there can be a strike that goes wrong beyond the currently accepted type of trading fire between the two parties, and such a situation can lead to a very fast escalation that may draw even regional powers into the equation. And I think that nobody wants that, really.
And I think that's a big concern. I think both sides have seemed a little bit hesitant to take it forward. We've seen a lot of Netanyahu right-wing government putting a lot of pressure on it. And both sides, they initially started the attacks within about 4 kilometers radius, either sides of the border. We've seen Israel now move about 120, 130 kilometers past that border as well. And there is that big concern that one strike too many is going to erupt a full-blown war. We've seen Israel pressure about the start of the new school year, hoping for de-escalation. Do you see this conflict stopping, or do you see it escalating?
Look, eventually I see it stopping. Of course, we have to go through a difficult period until some type of arrangement is reached in Gaza. Once that is done, I think Hezbollah will, Hezbollah is not enamored of having a war in the region, just like, as you said, Israel is trying to avert that. So I think that once we have some type of an agreement in Gaza, situation will calm down. And I think that eventually, with negotiations, we can go back to focusing on building our country, on dealing with our refugee crisis. We have 2 million Syrian refugees today. This is not good for any Lebanese, including Hezbollah or any other party. All the Lebanese are united in trying to see a solution to the refugee crisis, and this is something that I would be very involved with and have ideas about how to deal with that. And there's a need to approach the entire relationship with Syria, I think, in a different way for Lebanon. So these are the things that we need to work on. We need to go back to, Lebanon used to embody, in many ways, in the minds of many people, still does. It embodies that idea of a place that everybody can talk freely. Everybody, it was a convener of the Arab world, of the various religions in the world. That's why Pope John Paul II called it a message. Lebanon is a message to humanity about the coexistence of different, not only religions, but also different ideas and different, all the kinds of things that we need to bring together, different races, different ways of living. And this is, Lebanon can be a model for the world in that way. It is. I mean, it is on a daily basis. It is. It's just the politics that cover up that coexistence that is so precious, and that really, it's once we move away that veil of political conversation, like I said, that is leading nowhere, and we go back to people, we can bring Lebanon back to where it was.
I have to say, it does not feel like a model for the world at the moment. Certainly, some huge challenges still remain. Well, let's talk about some of the security matters in a bit more detail. Earlier this month, a gunman who may have had Daesh connections opened fire at the US Embassy in Beirut before he was caught. And in many respects, the shooting really brought back memories of previous deadly attacks on US sites in the mid-80s, 1983, 84. Tell me, what can be done to restore confidence in Lebanon's ability to be able to protect diplomatic posts and their staff?
Yeah, I mean, we should not blow things out of proportion. Just one guy firing a handheld weapon against the U.S. Embassy. The U.S. Embassy in Lebanon is one of the largest embassies in the world and the best protected with, all kinds of perimeters and high walls and all of that. Just one guy firing a gun is in desperation or in frustration. It could happen anywhere in the world. Let's
But
not
we
really
don't see
bring
those
that
incidents
into
happen
blow it out of
we
proportion.
don't see those incidents happen in many other parts of the region, particularly GCC. We simply don't see those attacks. I think being able to say that that kind of thing could happen anywhere is not necessarily correct. So how do we try and build up that confidence, given what Lebanon is also dealing with on a daily basis?
No, I put to you that it is correct. I mean, if you would like to take the GCC countries, maybe that is the exception. I think something like this can happen anywhere in the world. It happens in malls, it happens in schools, it happens everywhere. I mean, the US and other countries have seen this kind of violence. Even London has seen this kind of violence. Everywhere has seen this kind of violence. This is not, we need not blow it out of proportion. The Lebanese army and the Lebanese security forces have done a fantastic job, even at situations when we have political instability, we don't have a functioning government, we don't have a president. The Lebanese army and Lebanese forces have done a fantastic, absolutely fantastic job of keeping the peace, of making sure that we don't have any serious security incidents.
Okay, well, when we focus on security or regional conflicts, you've said that your pragmatism extends to your views regarding all outstanding issues, including Hezbollah's weapons. So when we look at the ongoing conflict, do you believe it is Hezbollah's moral duty to stand by the people of Gaza as they continue to face Israel's military onslaught? Or should Lebanese groups stay out of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, as MP Sami Jamil seems to think?
I really think that we should be staying out of conflicts in general. Lebanon is tired of all the problems that you enumerated and that it faces. We need to concentrate on rebuilding our country, rebuilding its economy, taking care of our young people, lowering the rate of emigration, dealing with the refugee crisis, taking care of our elderly. These are really pressing issues, and we should be focusing on that. But of course, I do understand the frustration of many Lebanese, including myself and many in the world, of saying, look, there's such attacks on humanity, such human rights violations, are not acceptable, and we need to revolt against them. And by God, I need to do something about it. I mean. Every one of us, or I should say, most Lebanese and many people in the world feel that way. And, I'm sure Hezbollah and its community feel that way even more. I mean, it's just out of frustration of seeing such injustice and wanting to do something about it.
And of course, there are big concerns about Hezbollah becoming more involved. The Biden administration has warned Israel that widening its conflict against Hezbollah would risk drawing in Iran. Do you worry that Lebanon, like Syria, may have become the battleground of a deadly shadow war between Israel and Iran?
There is that potential, and this is exactly what we need to prevent from, escalating and becoming more so. I think that eventually there needs to be, the entire region needs to find a way forward. I mean, the agreements between Saudi Arabia and Iran are, point the way. I mean, this is the kind of approach that we need for the entire region. And I think that we can achieve that. It takes will. I mean, if there's a will, there is a way.
Well, you've spoken today about the importance of Lebanon being able to reclaim its role as a mediator, uniting the West and the East and all of the countries of the region. But today, it's France and other countries who are acting as intermediaries between Lebanon and Israel to be able to prevent a wider conflict. So how can Lebanon imagine going from being a victim of divisions to a regional uniter?
I think, like I said, once the political conversation changes in Lebanon, this will happen automatically, because Lebanon as a uniter, Lebanon as a convener, is something that's happening every day. Every day is happening outside the political arena. If you look at the Lebanese working in the Middle East and everywhere in the Gulf region, otherwise and elsewhere, if you look at how the Lebanese, even among themselves, from all factions, they interact on a daily basis. They work together. They are producing all kinds of even media programming, and it's just, if we look at the people and how they work, you will see that the potential is there. The ability of the Lebanese to speak multiple languages. Look, Lebanon, the Lebanese are the most cosmopolitan people on earth. I don't know any people that is as cosmopolitan as the Lebanese, because there's not one Lebanese family that does not have members of it around the world, from Argentina to South Africa to Australia, all the way up to Kamchatka and Russia and Norway and Canada, if I want to make a circle of the world. Every country in the world, I've been to places like Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan and Mongolia and Gabon in Africa and all kinds of places, and you always find the Lebanese there. And they're usually very active. They're still connected to Lebanon. So we need to give the Lebanese people a chance. We need to let the politicians take a rest and let the Lebanese people shine.
Well, you do seem very calm and confident about Lebanon being able to move ahead out of this political deadlock. Now, let's say you do manage to win the presidency. Some big challenges. Firstly, you need to be able to establish a government that's free of corruption. You need to be able to put a number of these economic reforms in place, chiefly those that are needed to be able to secure the IMF deal. So as a former banker yourself, do you see the IMF reforms as really the only viable way to help Lebanon move forwards from an economic standpoint?
Not necessarily in the sense that what the IMF program, what the IMF proposes is the only way. There are many ways of skinning that cat, as they say. I have played instrumental roles in dealing with the financial and debt crises of Mexico, Honduras, Venezuela, Trinidad and Tobago. I have also helped South Africa and Mexico regain their access to the international capital markets after they were sort of defaulted and were no longer welcome in them. So I have a lot of experience in this. I have presented a plan specifically for Lebanon for getting out of its financial crisis. It is built on converting the bank deposits into tradable CDs on the Beirut Stock Exchange to enable the capital markets to come back to life again. It involves using some of the gold reserves to create funds for social development and for economic development. It includes regaining the ability of the government to not to raise taxes, but to collect taxes in order to be able to pay for the services it needs to deliver to the Lebanese public. So I do have some ideas. I think that the International Monetary Fund's approval is very important, because we do need the seal of approval of the IMF to regain confidence of investors. But I think there are many ways to discuss with the IMF what could be acceptable to them, as well as taking the Lebanese reality into consideration.
And I think it's the reality of that is the problem. You've spoken there about being able to reignite local stock markets. Well, investors have labelled Lebanon as the riskiest country in the world. And locally, there doesn't seem to be much appetite for economic reforms amongst Lebanese politicians. And a Lebanese government being free of corruption, frankly, sounds like a pipe dream. Tell me, can you be Lebanon's Nayib Bukele, the iron-fisted president of El Salvador, who's been recognised for his swift success in being able to curb corruption as well as gang-related crimes too? Is that how you envision yourself?
No, I wouldn't want to compare myself to him or to any other person. What I can say is that the Lebanese politicians themselves are starting to realize that the situation that we are in cannot continue. I was heartened just yesterday, two major parties presented proposals for legislation in Parliament for reorganizing the state-owned enterprises. The fact that and they're from opposing sides of the spectrum, so the fact that two parties are starting to talk about the same kinds of things is very heartening. So I think that, corruption exists in every country in the world. It is just a matter of good governance. And I have written a paper on what I consider to be the good governance reforms that we need. Too long to go into detail in this interview, but just reforming some elements of our governance could go a long way towards stemming corruption without it being necessarily, without it involving a heavy hand or confrontations or anything like that. And to give you an example, just reviewing what the role of the minister is compared to the role of the director general of a ministry, that by itself can, cut corruption by a long, very, very much.
And it is a very ambitious vision, from humane democracy, sustainable development goals, equitable tax system, equitable subsidies, no favoritism. All of that seems very far removed from the everyday realities of Lebanon. Tell me, where will the money and the motivation for this come from?
Well, we have to believe in the ability of the people of Lebanon to effect change. Where will the money come from? In my economic program, I did present some ideas along those lines. For example, I did say that we need to convert about $1 billion of our gold reserves towards creating a social support fund. We need to convert another $1 billion to support SMEs and the growth of small and medium enterprises in Lebanon. These are things, there's a lot of detail in that, but we should not forget that the economy in Lebanon is actually getting back on its feet without even any government intervention. Now, so there is, I think, we did end up with a dollarized economy, but the difficult part of the financial and economic crisis is now behind us. The important thing is to make sure that this recovery is sustainable.
Well, we've seen the value of the pound drop. We've seen day-to-day cost of living. I would say it's not recovering.
I just want to make one point, which is that, when you say that investors are not interested in Lebanon, maybe investors that don't know Lebanon are not interested because obviously it has that kind of image in the media. But the Lebanese are investing big time in Lebanon. There's huge investments coming into Lebanon to the tune of $7 to $8 billion a year.
Well, beyond just the economy, I know you also intend to be able to maintain, solidify, and develop special relations with nations across the region, especially the GCC. Tell me, do you have a clear path to try and revive the GCC bloc's interests, especially economic interests, and restore new trust in Lebanon's political and policy stability?
Well, I think the relationship with the GCC is crucial. Those countries are the hosts of hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of Lebanese that are working there. So they are very important currently to our economy with the remittances of these people. But also, of course, the Lebanese are contributing to the growth and development and that is happening in the region because the Lebanese working there are highly educated, highly skilled, able to contribute in a big way. This mutual relationship of benefits needs to be strengthened. I think that with Vision 2030 in Saudi Arabia and other plans in the UAE and other countries, these are big opportunities for the Lebanese, big opportunities for Lebanon to solidify its relationships with those countries and governments and projects, and as well as for them to see that they already know, but that Lebanon has much to offer to contribute towards their success.
Well, let me ask you about Saudi Arabia specifically there. We're obviously now 8 years into the Saudi Vision 2030 transformation, but do you think there are still a number of opportunities that prevail for Lebanese companies to be able to take advantage of today and in the future?
Yes, sure. Actually, I'm very, very excited about this. I think with the opening that we're experiencing in Saudi Arabia, then the policy of the current government there is opening many opportunities for Lebanese companies to expand there. The same way that as they've done, opening branches and opening operations in the UAE, I think the same is going to happen in Saudi Arabia. Already, of course, many Lebanese companies are present there, but I think we'll see other Lebanese companies in fields and sectors that where they haven't been traditionally present. We'll see them present.
Well, Mr. Hayek, certainly some ambitious plans for Lebanon. We do wish you the best of luck in your presidential bid. There's no doubt some big hurdles remain. Thank you so much for joining us today on Frankly Speaking, though. We appreciate your insights.
Thank you very much for hosting me. I really appreciate you having me on the show.